สวัสดีค่ะ very good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight.
Good evening. As you can see, we're back at home, but that doesn't change a thing because we still have a lot of news to report. And speaking of which, let's start with some good and important news. So the Thai cabinet has approved the procurement of additional 30 million doses of Pfizer's mRNA COVID vaccine by the Thailand's Diseases Control Department. So the department has been authorized to sign the third amendment to the manufacturing and supply agreement with Pfizer for vaccine procurement, which will enable the Disease Control Department to receive the new generation of Pfizer vaccine for children. So this new lot of 30 million doses are to be delivered into Thailand in several lots during the first, second, and third quarters of next year. So actually, it's quite a long span of time. But with the additional doses, Thailand will have procured a total of 60 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine altogether.
And meanwhile, Public Health Minister Anutin Chanvirakul is urging unvaccinated people, especially those who are waiting for Pfizer or Moderna vaccines that they booked with private hospitals, to cancel their bookings and get the free jabs of Pfizer at state vaccination facilities. The minister stressed the urgent need to speed up vaccinations to reach the target of 100 million doses administered by the end of this month. However, he made clear that the Public Health Ministry will not negotiate refunds with the Private Hospital Association if they do abandon their bookings now, because it is not the duty of the ministry to do so. And previously, he already said that there is no need to make the paid for bookings with private hospitals. Anutin said that the ministry will provide free Pfizer vaccine injections for the unvaccinated who are still waiting for the Moderna vaccine from private hospitals. So we can see that with the government procuring more mRNA vaccines, so they're urging the people who are not vaccinated yet to get vaccinated, and it's free as well.
Yeah, actually, on one hand, it's definitely good news for some, but for others, when we recently reported that we got like 1 million doses more of the Moderna from the U.S., which was a donation, and actually questions have been raised, and this hasn't been answered thoroughly yet, as in who will, receive all those doses. For example, how we also reported that in Nonthaburi, which is near Bangkok, the provincial authority did organize to have the locals free Moderna. And some may say that, well, it may be unfair to them because they did pay in advance already for the Moderna shots, and those still haven't arrived. So I think, of course, on one hand is the more the merrier, the more vaccines the better, of course, but the allocation, the management, we have to call that into question as well.
Right, and we still cannot forget those who refuse to get vaccinated, and the government is now getting some responses as to why they refuse them, so that they can come up with more measures to encourage people to get vaccinated as soon as possible, especially to reach its target as well. And now let's move on to some big news. We've been following the possible merger between True and Dtac, and it has raised a lot of concerns, especially among the customers who are under True and Dtac to begin with. And recently, the National Broadcasting and Telecommunications Commission, which is Thailand's telecom regulator, has confirmed that the customers of True and Dtac will not be affected for the time being. And this follows the announcement of a potential merger between the two telecom giants. Deputy Secretary General of the NBTC, Suthisak Tantayotin, said that the Trade Competition Commission, or the TCC, should step in examining the potential merger, as they did in the case of the takeover of the Tesco Lotus retail chain in Thailand and Malaysia by the CP Group. He said that the NBTC has no authority to interfere with ongoing talks between Norway's Telenor and Thailand's CP Group because it is at the stage of due diligence and discussions over share swaps. He explained that the current talks are not directly between the two telecom license holders, but in fact, the talks are in between their two holding companies, Telenor and CP Group, which at this stage falls under the jurisdiction of the Stock Exchange of Thailand. The holding companies are not the telecom license holders, and therefore the MBTC has no right to intervene at this stage. However, if or when the process involves the two license holders, TUC and DTN, then they will have to comply with the NBTC regulations. So for the time being, the customers of True and Dtac will not be affected by the possible merger, but we'll have to see how it goes as well.
Right, of course, and it's still a long way to go. I mean, there's nothing being formalized yet, and it's not really a complete merger of the two, as a lot of people make it actually. And moving on to politics, 1 year on already since the enforcement of Thailand's controversial lèse majesté law resumed after a 2-year break. At least 156 political activists in Thailand have faced the charges in actually 162 cases pending with the police, the prosecutors, or the courts itself. And this is according to the Thai Lawyers for Human Rights, or TLHR. So the number is considered a record high already, said the Internet Law Reform Dialogue, or we know it as iLaw. And most of the alleged offenders have been freed on bail, but a handful are being held on remand pending trial. Among them are the leading lights of the Rasadon anti-establishment group, namely Anonampa Parit Shiwarak, who's known as Penguin, Panupong Jatnok, who's known as Mike, Benja Apan Jatapat Patara Raksa, also better known as Pai Dowdin, and Rung Panasaya Sithi Jiratwatanagun. And actually, the cases are spread within these people, about 1 or 2 dozen cases each, with especially among Parit or Penguin and Anonampa, while others actually, their cases are a little bit fewer, around ranging from 3 to 9 cases, for example. So actually, so about 3 years ago, there has been there was a pause of the use of this law because it has actually raised a lot of concerns, questions, a lot of criticism, not just at home, but also abroad. And according to the Prime Minister, some mercy has been exercised into, putting a pause, a break into that. But as we all know, since early last year, there were a sporadic protests, some big, some small, and the issue of the monarchy and the reform of the monarchy have been raised, and this is why we have this record number right now of the cases.
And most of the people here are mostly the protest leaders to begin with. And one example, Penguin has up to 22 cases, and that is a lot for just one person. Or even like Rumpanasaya, she has 9 cases. Anonampa has 14 cases. So this is a lot here. All right, and still with politics as well as human rights, a draft bill which is aimed at protecting certain groups of people against discrimination. It has been drafted by 10 people groups, and it has already been signed by over 12,000 supporters. And recently, this draft bill has been submitted to the House of Representatives today. The secretary to House Speaker Chun Lee Pai received the draft bill and said that he will check the authenticity of the signatures and then submitted to officials for inclusion in the meeting agenda, and may later invite representatives of advocacy groups to the House to join meetings during the consideration of the bill. However, he suggested that the bill would have a better chance of being considered and endorsed by Parliament if it were to be proposed by a cabinet minister or a political party. The drafting of the bill was initiated to provide protection against discrimination for several vulnerable groups, such as the elderly, the disabled, those infected with HIV, ethnic minorities, the LGBT groups, people in the service sector, as well as women. The network of people's groups wants the Prime Minister to accept their draft bill as a matter of principle and would like to see the Department of Rights and Liberties Protection at the Ministry of Justice to propose a parallel bill to Parliament, so both will be deliberated simultaneously. So this is something that we have to watch out for, because this is directly related to human rights and the protection of the groups that are considered vulnerable in society, especially with the discrimination and all these things.
Exactly, because, you know, it's not just about the mainstream people in the capital and, you know, the mainstream workforce, but the vulnerable groups. The name says it all. They are vulnerable and needs extra protection. And let's end the program with this story. The Thailand Secretariat of the Cabinet has actually allocated some 2.6 million baht of taxpayers' money to buy some more iPhones, more than 100 iPhones, for high-ranking officials in the government, and citing efficiency and good governance, but attracting considerable public criticism after the document of the purchase has been leaked. So Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, who's also eligible to receive one as the head of the cabinet, has decided to forego this particular privilege. No more iPhone for me. And so after the procurement document went viral and drew a lot of criticism, an advisor to the Prime Minister's office, Natariya Thaviwong, explained that the smartphones issued to the office executives are due to be changed anyway, and hence the purchase. And the quoted price is also lower than the market price, she added. So, you may wonder what the phones are. They are iPhones 12s that came into capacities. So the 64 GB, they are for the low-ranking officials, and 128 GB for those holding higher positions, of course. Maybe, you know, you have more work to be done and storage needed. So according to this leaked document, the iPhones are intended to help ensure efficiency in public administration and enhance speed in accordance with the principle of good governance. And so the iPhone 12s are to replace the executive smartphones that were procured 4 years ago, the document said. Well, it is not normal, not abnormal, because a lot of us, I don't know, maybe change phones every few years. Especially iPhones, they keep coming out. The new versions keep coming out with better functions and more storage.
Exactly.
But of course, when it comes to, you know, it being funded by tax money, of course, questions are raised, criticism are made.
Yeah, and 111 iPhones for government officials, that is a lot. And using the taxpayers' money for that as well. But, well, the intention here is to ensure the efficiency in public administration and possibly to enhance the communication as well. So we are not sure whether this will be achieved or not, because we don't like to say this, but it has always been criticized that government authorities are pretty slow with communication and all the documentations and all these things. But hopefully the iPhones will
Mm.
help enhance all of that. And
I'm not so sure though, right?
yeah,
Because
not sure either.
it actually depends on a lot of factors like your internet connection as well. And it remains to be seen if, efficiency can really be enhanced by newer models. I still
Well,
actually have iPhone 8 Plus.
oh, you're still using
So,
iPhone 8?
and it still functions really well.
Right,
So,
but I think it
we'll
all
see.
depends on how
Yeah.
you really use it. If you use the iPhone 12 for just documents, or you have
Mm.
to take photos or whatever it is, but I think what they really need to focus on is not just the new technologies that they have to embrace, but to really improve the communication and the speed in terms of all the processes that they had to go through. Because
True.
I think you know what I mean here, but well, hopefully the iPhones might help.
Right. So, do share with us what you think, if it's all really that necessary. And with that, we wrap up this edition of Thai PBS World tonight. But do catch us like this every weekday at 7 p.m. for all the top stories, explainers, and of course, our commentaries.
And don't forget to follow us on social media as well as our website, thaipbsworld.com, for all the latest updates as well as analyses. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ